good evening or afternoon or morning, depending on what time zone you're joining us from. Dana and I will be sharing with you information about our merit scholarship opportunities here and the different things that we are looking for in scholarship applicants. So we'll go ahead and get going. So with our merit scholarships, as you can see here on the screen, there are a number of different ways that we will, or reasons, talents, recognitions that we will award scholarship money. The top two, Richmond Scholars Program and Presidential Scholarships, are our biggest awards that we will review during the admission process for consideration for those two big programs. You can see here also some of the, and we'll talk in a lot of detail about both Richmond Scholars and the Presidential Scholarship offers or programs. These are the other opportunities here below. Oliver Hill Scholars Program, which is a program that recognizes students who are selected as a Richmond Scholar or as a Presidential Scholarship awardee. The music, theater, dance departments offer talent scholarships through their departments for first-year students. Other academic scholarships aren't available to students until their sophomore year or later, but for those three departments, there are some talent-related scholarships within those academic departments. We're Division I, so athletic grant and aid is an option for those of you who might be in touch with the athletics department and playing in one of our 17 Division I sports teams. Bonner Scholars is a community service related scholarship that about 25 students each year come in as a Bonner Scholar. And there's a community service component to that scholarship, as well as some really great community building within the Bonner Scholars Program. And that offer is $3,000. It kind of varies each year. It is not always consistent, but about $3,000 per year for a 10-hour commitment each week during the academic year to do community service. And then ROTC. So we have Army ROTC. So if that's something that's on your mind, you should be in contact with the ROTC department here at Richmond. So that's a brief National Hispanic Scholarship. So if you have that recognition from the College Board, there is some scholarship money related to if you've been recognized as a National Hispanic Scholar. But that's the detail I'll share there. We'll spend most of our time talking about Richmond Scholars and the Presidential Scholarships. I should have mentioned earlier, the Q&A feature is there. We'll monitor that. Dana and I will as we go. And the chat feature has been disabled, but the Q&A, we will answer some maybe through writing. And if we have time at the end, we'll also do some live answering of questions. So we'll do our best to answer all the questions that come in through the Q&A. So for Presidential Scholars, students who any first-year applicant or all first-year applicants are considered for Presidential Scholarships. So all it is you need to submit your admission application and all of the admission materials to complete your application. And by doing that, you will automatically be considered for the Presidential Scholarship. We're looking to enroll around 85 students in our entering class of 815 to 820 students. So about 85 of those students will then get this 1/3 tuition scholarship per year award. You can see here on the left side of the screen, the GPA and test score ranges for students that we offer the Presidential Scholarship. Generally, students who have more A's than B's. So this is on a 4.0 unweighted scale. We do recalculate all first-year applicants' GPAs to be on a 4.0 unweighted scale. So that's what you're seeing here, not necessarily what your school reports on your transcript. So more A's than B's generally, as you can see here, and students who have or taking rigorous programs. So, you know, AP, IB, dual enrollment, or college level classes that your school offers, or whatever the highest level classes your school offers, so that you challenge yourself with the classes you're taking, and then also making good grades there, as well as with the test scores. You can see that middle 50% range there. We are test optional this year for seniors who are applying for scholarships, in addition to being test optional for the admissions process. So that's for all scholarships, presidential, Richmond Scholars, any of the other ones we talked about that we might be looking at your academic profile for that offer. So if you choose to submit your test scores, these are the ranges of students that we offer the presidential scholarship to, who are competitive for that. In addition to looking at your transcript and test scores for grades and classes you've taken, we're also looking at other parts of your application to help us in narrowing down who we make those offer to. So demonstrated leadership, the perspectives that you're sharing in your essays or within that are shared on your behalf in your recommendation letters, potentially what kinds of presence or impact you're having within your school or local community. So we're looking at some of the non-specifically academic or classroom related things that you've accomplished while in your 9th through 11th grade years. So for presidential scholars, as I mentioned, this is you apply for admission, you'll be considered. So for those of you who may have already submitted your application, early action or early decision 1, you're good. As we review your application in the next few weeks, few months, you will definitely be considered. If you're still considering whether to apply to Richmond, you still have time to apply for admission. Our final deadline there is January 1st. There's nothing extra that you need to do that you'll be asked to do to be considered for presidential scholarships. We will notify you if you're getting that 1/3 tuition award if and when we offer you an acceptance or an offer of admission. So that will come in your acceptance letter if you get an acceptance letter from us. Yeah, so that's the nuts and bolts of presidential scholarships. There's a lot more to Richmond Scholars, and that's where Dana here in just a moment will take over and share most about Richmond Scholars, as she works with Richmond Scholars closely. I'll share some of the academic pieces though. So with Richmond Scholars, we're looking for, as you can see, this profile is slightly higher than for presidential. So students who have even more A's than B's on that 4.0 unweighted scale, where we're recalculating your GPA as we do the initial review of your application. Once again, super rigorous programs, so the classes you're taking, the most challenging that your school offers. And then if you choose to submit your test scores, you can see those middle 50% ranges for students that we offer the Richmond Scholars to. So 1440 to a 1520. So 25% of students that we offer Richmond Scholars to have below a 1440, and similarly have below a 33 on the ACT. So with both SAT and ACT, we do super score. So if that's one of your questions, super scoring is in effect for both the admission part of the process and for scholarship consideration. And I'll turn it over to Dana.
So Rebecca, thanks for inviting me this evening. My name is Dana Kukum, and I am one of the directors of the Richmond Scholars Program. Both myself and Dr. Laura Naus, who is our faculty director, together take care of the selection and then the care and feeding of scholars once they come here. As Rebecca just said, the students that we're looking at for the Richmond Scholars Program all have outstanding academics within the classroom. I think what really makes them stand out to us as Richmond Scholars is that they are also pursuing these intellectual and academic interests outside the classroom. So that is sort of the first hallmark of what we look for, students that are sort of taking that engagement and doing more with it. And what this looks like can really depend. We really look at students within the context of the opportunities that they have available for themselves. And so while some students might have the ability to do science research at a local university. Other students may have no connections or ability or place to do that nearby them. So what they do might look different. For a student that wants to be is interested in physics and wants to be a physics major, if they're located in a major city and have connections and can do physics research at a local institution, a university, and start sort of building that record, that might look like outside engagement for them. For a student that might come from an area where that's not available, maybe physics research for them or physics engagement might be volunteering at a local planetarium, or it might be doing science outreach at a county fair. It might mean reading books by Richard Feynman in their spare time. So we really look within the context of the courses that you're offered at your institution, the locations that you're in, and the opportunities that you have and what you're doing with that. But we're looking for students that are doing stuff beyond just the work in the classroom. The second piece there, as I just kind of gave some examples for, is we're looking for students who have this interest in a topic or an issue, and they're putting their time and their efforts to back up that commitment. So not only are they just saying they're really interested in government or political science, and that's something that started through maybe an AP class, but now they're also getting involved in a local mayor's commission or working on policy or a campaign for a local school board. So taking their time and their efforts and investing those to demonstrate that commitment beyond the work that they're doing in the classroom. The third thing that we're looking at for Richmond Scholars is that it is a program. And so we are bringing students together in this community of scholars to get to know each other, to support one another throughout their time at UR. And so we are looking for students that aren't just bookworms, that just don't like to sit in their room by themselves and do homework and you know, code or do programming, but students that also want to go meet other scholars and talk about topics and disciplines that are totally different from what they do and learn new things and are curious about people from different backgrounds. Whether that's having dinner with someone tonight and learning about Diwali, or maybe it's about having a discussion and a debate with other students about who should create public school curriculums. We're looking for curious students that want to engage with each other and learn about different topics and from students from different backgrounds. So those are really the three hallmarks of what we want from Richmond Scholars. The next slide, I think, has some similar things here. So the academic achievement, these are the 4 criteria that we use to evaluate Richmond Scholars, that achievement both in the classroom and then beyond it. What we call engaged leadership. So this is showing initiative of ways to explore topics or issues of interest and trying to get engaged to solve problems or make a difference in your community. What we call a strong sense of purpose. This can mean could mean that you're starting to identify really where your interests lie and starting to follow those interests in pursuit of goals and making long-term goals of what you want to do perhaps down the road with some of those intellectual and academic interests. And then, as we said, desire to really reach whatever opportunities you have available to you and to grab those and do what you can with them. And then the last part there, as I noted, looking for students who want to be part of a community. I should say too, when I've mentioned already that we do evaluate students within the context of the opportunities they have available for themselves, things like engaged leadership and strong sense of purpose for some students that might have really significant family obligations. Maybe they're working 30 hours a week with a family business, or maybe they're taking care of younger siblings, or have other significant responsibilities to help parents translate things, or to help with sort of bureaucratic management of family operations. That can show us both a good sense of purpose, and we would consider that for some students leadership within their family. So we really are looking at a holistic view of what the students, what obligations and challenges they might have and how they are addressing those and looking to succeed in spite of maybe some challenges and hurdles that other students might not have. I don't know what's on the next slide here. This is the timeline. Before we talk about the timeline, I'm actually just going to talk a little bit about the program itself too. So the Richmond Scholars Program, it does provide students 8 semesters of tuition, room, and board scholarship. And those are students, international students are also eligible for those same amounts. So any student that applies to the University of Richmond by December 1st is considered for that without any separate application. In addition to the tuition and room and board, our students also receive priority registration. They also receive priority housing on campus and guaranteed housing for their 4 years here. Past that, we have a $3,000 enrichment grant that all of our Richmond scholars are eligible to apply for. And this is funding that can be used for students. They have to write a grant proposal that talks about how this is going to help advance their academic or professional goals. They have a faculty member that sort of endorses that grant application, and then we review those, and anything that they make a strong case for, we will fund. So we've had students who were majoring in dance who applied to use those funds towards doing a summer intensive at a dance company in the summer. We've had students who have applied to go and use that to go to professional conferences, for networking, or maybe to present some research that they've done at a professional conference. We've had students propose to go do thesis research abroad, and for that to fund some of their travel expenses. We've had students who are on the pre-med track apply to use those funds to get certified to be an EMT through an EMT certification class. So we look pretty broadly at what they might be able to do with those funds. In addition to the 8 semesters of tuition, room and board and the $3,000 enrichment grant, we also then have a program. So we are trying to build that community of scholars. We are taking students on retreats when they first get here to really bond and get to know their class. We take our seniors on a domestic trip here in the United States. We just got back fall break with our senior class. We went to Chicago for 4 days. We are doing programming activities with the students. They're in the middle right now of a movie night right outside here, just to sort of build some community and have a social engagement. We try and connect them with faculty. We had a Bring Your Faculty Mentor to Breakfast event last week, right before students schedule for classes. So that's an opportunity for them to come and they both to eat breakfast together and talk about what courses they might be scheduling for the next semester. So those are some of the types of programs we have. We also do pair our students with faculty mentors that match their interests from the get-go before they even step foot on campus, and try and foster those connections too. And then with the faculty director for the program, obviously has that faculty connection. I should note too, which is sort of getting back to the slide here, that the Richmond Scholars are selected by faculty on campus. So any student that applies by December 1st will be considered for Richmond Scholars. There's no separate application. You just have to have a complete application by December 1st in whatever decision path that you're on, just by that date. In January, then our faculty committees start to review students, and they see all of the materials that you submit for the common application or the coalition application. Our faculty then create a subset of students that are named finalists, and who we invite to come and do interviews via Zoom. Those interviews take place in mid-February, and then we put out offers to those scholars a few weeks later. For the students who are offered a space in the Richmond Scholars Program, we have traditionally brought those students to campus for a campus visit. It's a 3-day campus visit towards the end of March. We are very hopeful that that will take place in person again this year. So that is our plan to do so. And we do pay all expenses for those students to come for that 3-day visit. We really would like them to see campus for themselves, to meet our faculty, to meet our current scholars, and to make sure that Richmond is a great fit for them. So that is a little bit about the process. Rebecca, did I miss anything key?
Well, maybe one question that's come in that is closely related to what you've been talking about. Would you consider the Richmond Scholars Program to be similar to an honors college experience at another university?
I would say no. And the reason for this is that our main goal with the Richmond Scholars is to create this community of support and engagement and sort of intellectual interaction between the students, and to ensure we have a sort of an extra level of staff here to help advise them and make sure that they are headed in the directions they want to go in, and connected with the right faculty that might help them on their way. But past that, we don't have a lot of requirements. So we don't require that they do a lot of events. We don't require they take certain courses. We don't require they major in certain things. Our goal is to take these fantastically engaged leaders to campus, and we want them out there living in all the dorms, and we want them being leaders of all the clubs and in all the majors. And we want them really integrated into campus and sort of spreading that enthusiasm and energy everywhere throughout their class, and not just sort of together, kind of more, some honors colleges might have them a little more siloed away together. And that's just not the approach that we've taken with the Richmond Scholars Program. And liken it to a sports team. We sort of charge them all that you are the captains of the sports team and the freshman class is your team, and go captain your team and encourage them and motivate them and lead them where you need to, and in the classroom and with all the different activities that take place on campus.
Great. One other question I think that would be helpful to just talk about right now is someone asked, is the $3,000 in addition to the Richmond Guarantee money?
That is correct. So the Richmond Guarantee is a fantastic program that we have there that can provide up to $4,000 in the summer to either do an internship or to do research. Usually those are the two things that the students use them for. And those are only for summer programs. It's also, there are summer research funds that it can be possible to do research funded for multiple summers too, actually here. The Richmond Scholars Enrichment Grant, sometimes students will use it for the same thing. Maybe they already did one unpaid internship, so they'll use their scholars grant for the next one. But there's also more flexibility in the scholars grant. They can use it during the academic year. They can use it on a spring break. They could use it to do things that aren't just internships or jobs. So for instance, if you wanted to get certified as an EMT, that's not covered by the Richmond Guarantee, but that would be covered under the grants that we have. So a little more flexible, but on top of that. So our students are able to take advantage of sort of multiple funding streams here, which is great.
Great, thank you. And then there are a few folks who are asking for clarification or just to repeat again how the interview process works.
Sure.
Who conducts the interviews? Is it in person, online, that kind of thing?
So the interviews are online. They were actually online pre-pandemic. They're staying online. So we do those via Zoom currently. Our goal is to do the interview and select our students and then bring those students to campus where they can really get to know Richmond and make sure it's the right fit for them, versus bringing them to campus, having them very nervous about an interview or anxious, and you know, it's a different feel, and that's not what we wanted. So we do the interviews first online via Zoom, and then those interviews are done. One member of the staff of the program, either myself, our faculty director, or our associate director, will be in each of those interviews. We then have usually 3 to 5 faculty members that are on the interview panels. And then also we will have one student. We have 6 Richmond Scholar ambassadors, which are some of our current students that are available to answer questions and help students connect with Richmond and with the Scholars Program in particular. And they do sit in on those panels as well. So it's usually going to be somewhere about 5 or 6 people, combination of one of us, a student, and a handful of faculty members.
Do the Richmond Scholars need to maintain a minimum GPA to remain in the program?
So actually for, I believe, all of our merit awards, including the Presidential Scholars, the Richmond Scholars, all students need to maintain a 3.0 cumulative GPA to remain in the program, or to remain, to retain their scholarships. We know that sometimes students can have a tough semester or a hard time transitioning. And so we do allow students several semesters of probation if they happen to dip below that. And we help them design a plan with their academic advisors to sort of get back on track and get back over that 3.0 mark. For our Richmond Scholars, I think in the last year and a half, I'm not sure we've had any student that sort of dipped below that. I think our average GPA is pretty high here for the Richmond Scholars, but certainly we're here to help support students that might need a little extra planning, a little extra structure to hit that 3.0.
Great. There are other questions, but I think we'll keep rolling, and then we'll do a real run through the questions in just a few minutes. So thanks for letting me throw those questions at you now, even though that was not our exact plan earlier. So kind of taking the scope back to be a little bit more big picture. So in thinking about the two big scholarships that we offer, so including both the Richmond Scholars and the Presidential Scholarship students, 1 in 6 of our incoming students receive one of those 2 merit scholarships. So as you're thinking about what kind of chance might I have, I mean, of course, it's very much dependent on what you've accomplished during high school, the ways you've been involved, and to some degree how you present yourself within your application materials as the admission office is doing the initial review, and then as Dana and the faculty committee, Richmond Scholars Committee are looking at your application if you make it to the next round. And to give you that idea, these application stats in the bottom left here are for the current, the class that just finished applying. So those that are first year students at Richmond now, we received just under 14,000 total applications. You see here, we admitted about 4,000 students and enrolling 876. So that's then 1 in 6 of those 876 are receiving merit, receiving either Richmond Scholars or the Presidential Scholarship. And as you're maybe thinking, like, what is my chance? I mean, that's the like purely statistical way to look at it. Another thing to think about or to consider as you're pondering your chance for Richmond Scholars. Once again, it's very individual because we do a holistic review of all of our applicants in the admission process, also in the Richmond Scholars process. So all of the pieces of the application that you send us, we look at. It makes a difference as we're considering you for both admission and scholarships. With Richmond Scholars, as the admission office is combing through all of those students that apply by December 1st, which last year was somewhere over 9,000 applicants, is that really the students that stand out for Richmond Scholars are the best one in their high school, or maybe even the best one in their high school in the past few years. And what exactly does that mean and make the student stand out? Dana shared a lot of that. And so all of those things are then or a combination of those things, not all of them, because that's impossible, but a combination of those things really is then what makes the student stand out. And the ways that we're seeing that as the best applicant or the best student in the school this year or in the past few years is in a lot of ways what your counselor or teachers might say in your recommendation letters. And it's never as direct as the best one in the school this year or whatnot, but it's just the way that your counselor or teachers share information about you. It's also what you put in your resume. So a number of students have asked in the Q&A about submitting a resume or an additional resume. Yes, it's fine for you to submit an additional resume. If you feel like what you were able to share in your resume or the activities list in the common application or coalition application was not enough space to really do some of the work you have accomplished in these past 3-4 years justice, as we're looking at your application, totally acceptable for you to upload a resume in your Spider portal. So please use the Spider portal to share that. I mean, there are other ways like email that you could do that, but you can be self-sufficient in submitting that in your Spider portal. So hopefully that helps as far as the questions about submitting a resume. It can help. Will it absolutely help? I can't say because it's very much an individual kind of answer. All right. So here's some emails. As I was just saying, please don't email us with materials, but if you have other questions or if for some reason you can't get into your Spider portal or can't get it to work the way you want to, please, one, let us know that. But two, here's some emails that you can find us. So if you have additional application materials, try and use your portal, but you can also email them to this application@richmond.edu email address. If you have just more general questions that aren't specifically about your application or submitting materials, you can email the admission email address right there. And if you have specific questions about Richmond Scholars, or if you want to know more about fellowships. So what current students are thinking about as far as opportunities to advance their experiences, either while in college or post being in college. The Scholars Office is a great way to get in touch with Dana and others in her office. Once again, if you have specific questions about Richmond Scholars. So that is what specifically we have to share in our PowerPoint, but we will jump to answering more questions.
I'm trying to answer a bunch of these. Rebecca, one that came through, I didn't know the answer to because it's not something that we even look at on the Richmond Scholars side. Somebody asked if we know the breakdown of students for Richmond Scholars that are ED versus EA versus RD. I mean, we don't look at it any differently. I don't know. I couldn't even venture a guess.
I mean, I could give you an idea, but honestly, you know, it very much depends on each student. So we don't, you know, if you've applied early decision and you're thinking that we're going, because you've already made that commitment to us, we're not going to feel as compelled to consider you for Richmond Scholars or to give you a presidential. That's absolutely not true. We look at all students equally, especially, well, for both scholarship opportunities. So if you applied early decision, don't worry, you're not at a disadvantage because you've made that commitment by that application decision plan. And similarly with early action and regular decision, all we're really looking for is, did you apply by December 1st? It doesn't matter which decision plan you've used. We're not advantaging or disadvantaging any applicant based or in any way, but certainly not by the decision plan you've applied under.
And going along with that, there's a few questions here sort of about timelines. So we notify students if they're finalists for Richmond Scholars by February 1st, but they, depending on what plan they're on, they might have found out already that they are admitted to the university before then.
Right, so if you've applied early decision 1 or early action, you will find out your admission decision before you know if you're going to be, what am I trying to say, a Richmond Scholar finalist. You're not going to know. So you could know you're in, and especially if you've applied early decision, you'll be committed to attending Richmond, but it still could be a nice surprise later on in you know, the winter to find out you're being interviewed for Richmond Scholars.
And so then we do reach out to students by February 1st to invite you to an interview. So you might have heard other things about admission to the university, et cetera. Or you might not yet have heard from admission. You might kind of hear from us together that we've invited you to interview for Richmond Scholars. One thing that we added last year that we're going to keep doing is that for those students who are invited to register and sign up for an interview time, we do hold a webinar in between when we notify you and before the interviews start, so that you can come and hear from our Richmond Scholar ambassadors and from us and learn a little bit more about the program now that it's sort of a real and tangible thing for you. Refresh your memory about a little bit more about what we're looking for and what kind of scholars that we have there. So that's kind of helps to jog your memory if you are invited to come and chat with us.
So looking at this first question that's still in the open section about can you have a combination of outside scholarships and pair them with Richmond scholarships? So yes, the only rule to that is you can't be receiving scholarship money above the cost of attendance. So if you're a Richmond Scholar and then you also get outside scholarships, we'll adjust the scholarship amount so that you're receiving up to the cost of attendance. So you're not going to make money off of scholarship money for attending Richmond and being a Richmond Scholar, or a presidential scholarship, depending on how much outside scholarship money that you might be getting.
And this kind of goes in tandem with another question that I think I already answered. While we don't, these are merit awards, so we don't look at financial need while we're reviewing these. I still recommend that any students who are in the running for a Richmond Scholar Award or a presidential submit the FAFSA if they do have financial need or believe they might. As Rebecca just alluded, the Richmond Scholar Award covers tuition, room, and board, but there is a little gap between what covers tuition, room and board, and the full cost of attendance. Cost of attendance would also include a little money for books or other personal needs, etc. And so if you apply for the FAFSA and might be eligible for things like a federal Pell Grant, or maybe if you're from the state of Virginia, the Virginia Tuition Assistant Grant, if you bring some of those other funds, you may, on top of the Richmond Scholars Award, be able to access a few $1,000s each semester to pay for your books and other expenses. Some of those are driven by the FAFSA. Some of them are just driven by other, I think VTAG isn't FAFSA driven, maybe, not positive. That's for students from the state of Virginia. But I think it's always a good idea to make sure that you are sort of maximizing whatever funding you might be able to be eligible for. And the FAFSA, filing the FAFSA is really the way to know that. So yeah, that would be how outside awards or scholarships can work there. Also for students that, are coming into the university and might have had sort of a one-time scholarship that they got from their high school or a Rotary Club or something like that. There are some ways that financial aid can allow use of a one-time scholarship that might be available for specific educational expenses, maybe to buy a computer or something like that. But it's a one-time piece that can get a petition from financial aid on the way in.
So Dana, are international students eligible for Richmond Scholars?
Yes, they are. About a third of our, about 30% of our freshman class of scholars are international students. We have students from just about everywhere: Malaysia, Armenia, Russia, Brazil, Venezuela, India. So we encourage international students to apply. As long as you apply by December 1st, you will be considered for the Richmond Scholars Program.
On a totally different note, there's still a few questions hanging out there around the EA or like notification timeline and all of that. So we'll both tag team, I think, kind of going over again how the notification process works and aligns with admission decision and notification about scholarships. So presidential scholarships come out in the acceptance letter. So there's nothing else you'll need to do to be considered. There's no interview process for presidential scholarships. It will be when notifications go out for admission decisions. You'll find out in your acceptance letter, if we admit you, you'll find out in your acceptance letter if we've determined in the admission office to offer you a presidential scholarship. For Richmond Scholars, if you're early decision 1 or early action applicant, you will find out your admission decision before you know anything about Richmond Scholars. And so you'll know if you're accepted or not. And then later on, you may or may not hear about needing or having the opportunity to interview for Richmond Scholars. So hopefully that helps that kind of outstanding question.
When are presidential scholars announced? Did you just say that?
Mm-hmm.
Would you be
hopefully I've covered that.
Yeah. Would you be considered for a presidential Richmond Scholar if you are already a presidential? Yes, you can be. If you found out you're a presidential, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are not being considered then for Richmond Scholar.
One other note on that is if you were asked to interview for Richmond Scholars, you're guaranteed a presidential scholarship. So whether then we ultimately offer you the Richmond Scholars Award, you are guaranteed that 1/3 tuition scholarship if you interview in the Richmond Scholars process.
Rebecca, I don't know if you know the answer to this. There's a question about do the music department scholarships cover 4 years, or are these 1 year, or do they have to be re-upped with auditions? Do you know any more information about how those work?
They usually, for music, theater, and dance departmental scholarships, those cover 4 years. Those scholarship amounts range from a few $1,000s to almost full tuition, not a total cost of attendance or tuition room and meals, but the amount varies based on how the music department faculty decide they want to offer the money that year. So they don't require yearly auditions. So if you get it your first year, there may be some requirements that you have to be a music major or minor. And then if you decide to not to change your mind and not be a music major or minor, that may change the scholarship offer you're getting from, or the scholarship award you're getting from the music department, or theater and dance if you're thinking that way. So yes, they last for the 4 years.
We have a student here asking about how we look at a high school student who will have their associate degree. Certainly that can, show some initiative of students who are looking to challenge themselves. We do see a lot of students that are taking dual enrollment classes, or some of those might end up with an associate degree. Some of them just might end up with some experience with college level classes. So especially if those are related to the type of interest they want to pursue, that can be great. Will we need to prepare for the interview? Are there any test-like academic questions? There are not academic questions. These are faculty in the room, and it is an interdisciplinary board of faculty that will be speaking with you. So you might be a math student and there might be a math professor there, but there probably will also be a historian there and maybe a French professor and somebody from the leadership school there. So it could be a array of different folks that are talking to you. They like to hear about your interests and they like to engage with you about them. So if you've been doing an interesting capstone project through a computer science course or something, they might want to talk to you about that and how you're approaching it and what you're doing with it. But it's just to learn more about sort of your interests and how your thought process and what you're doing with those, not to throw out, sort of gotcha questions to try and test if you know the answer to something. That is not the goal with any of those questions. It's just to really sort of dig a little deeper to see what makes you tick and what you want to do in college, how you want to keep developing those interests, and what you want to take advantage of when you're here at Richmond. That's usually what they poke around to try and find out about.
So someone asked about kind of if your test score is below the middle 50% range that was shown for either the presidential or the Richmond Scholars, could that still make them competitive? Yeah, there's not a test score minimum or a GPA minimum requirement to be considered for any of the scholarships. I would say generally though, students who are falling below that middle 50% range for either presidential or Richmond Scholars, which varies somewhat, but that what comes through in the resume, the essays, the recommendation letters, so the other ways that we're getting information about who you are as a person, not just as a student in the classroom, really has to be exceptional. So like super tippy top of your high school or your community, the local community, the region you're in. So hopefully that helps there. It's really nebulous, so I can't say yes or no because it very much depends on what is in the rest of your application. As far as applying test optional or being considered for scholarships and not submitting test scores, that's totally fine. We're not gonna ding you in any way because you choose not to submit your scores. So we'll just rely even more heavily on your day-to-day work and looking at your transcript, the grades you've made, the classes you're in, what your teachers and your counselor have said about you from the academic side of things. So hopefully that helps. The GPA range for students who receive Richmond Scholars and Presidential Scholarship, students who are competitive for that have significantly more A's than B's. So, it could be that a student who has a 3.6, which is getting more towards an even number of A's and B's, could be competitive because of the other parts of the application that we're reading make them really, really stand out. But there's certainly plenty of students who get Richmond Scholars and Presidential that have 4.0s. So I know it's maybe frustrating because the answer that I know I keep saying is kind of, it very much depends on you and your application and what you've done and how you've presented yourself. But that really is truly how it is. So, but more A's than B's is what makes a student really stand out for scholarship consideration.
Thank you. I'm just looking for what hasn't been answered. Somebody asked her, what is the most important part of the application when it's reviewed for a scholarship? For the Richmond Scholars, the most important part that we're looking at, again, is a student showing evidence of this intellectual curiosity and engagement past just their transcript. And that looks different for different students. For a student that is really interested in history, maybe it means they've been, working at a local cultural center and doing some exhibits there and curating with doing an internship with a curator there. Maybe it means they're made a documentary to enter a National History Day competition. Whatever ways they can find to investigate that, we're all for it, and we're looking for information about that in the application. So yes, the first and foremost thing we look for is where your interests are and what you're doing to really start developing deeper engagement with those interests outside the classroom.
We'll take maybe one more minute to answer a few more questions. If we don't get to yours, we'll download these questions and Dana or I will follow up with the individuals who ask them if we know who you are. And if not, you can email that one of those 3 email addresses that was up on the screen a few minutes ago. There are a few more questions about dance, theater, and music scholarships, kind of asking about numbers that are being offered. It very much varies based on the year. So it's dependent on what the music, theater, and dance departments, what kinds of talent they're looking for. They might be specifically looking for a bassoon player or a specific type of actor to fill in some kind of need they have it within the theater program, or specifically a technical theater person that has a specific interest or skill. So those are actually maybe even more selective, if you will, than Richmond Scholars and Presidential, just because the faculty in those departments are using the scholarships to help round out the talent and the needs and the skills that are within their departments. It does not affect your chances for scholarship if you apply undecided. It has what you intend to apply for, or not apply for, major in. It might be considered depending on if you list something, but it's not going to be then if you're undecided, or if you have said, you want to be a business major or a STEM major, it's not going to be a reason, at least, that you don't move forward in the consideration process. I guess, Dana, is there more you want to share for the interview part?
I don't think we're as interested in if you're declaring a certain area, but we are looking for what are you interested in? And maybe that's 2 things. Maybe you're super interested in French and you're really interested in computer science and you don't know which way you're going to go with that, but tell us what you've been doing in both of those areas so far, and sort of where your curiosity has led you, and how you've been developing those interests. So it doesn't have to be narrowed down to something, but we'd still be looking for evidence then of maybe several different interests that you've been exploring past your classes.
I think that's probably a good place to start. What do you think, Dana?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you all for coming tonight. I hope this was helpful. And we'll look forward to meeting some of you in person if you're able to make it to campus for campus visits, and hopefully see some of you in our Richmond Scholar interviews too in February.